welcome to the first edition of Punch TV for 2021. Yay! 2020 is behind us. We can start fresh. Well, this episode we have a real treat for you. Tony the Collector went to his friend Jeff's place and went bonkers. You will be stunned by his collection. We're so excited to share it with you. Then we have Craig and Hank, and they're going to go through their favorite picks from 2020, and I'm going to share with you my favorite picks in graphic novels from 2020, so stay tuned.
Hey everybody in Punch TV land, I'm here with my friend Jeff Porkins, and he's here to show us his collection. Now, I've been to a lot of houses, I've seen a lot of things, but you know what? This one's probably the top on my list as far as like what he has in his basement. I can only imagine what he has in other parts of the city, but in his basement, it's pretty exciting. All right, so what's up, Jeff? This is a pretty giant collection.
Welcome to the man cave. This is where it all began.
So what happened? This actually started off, and you were saying in the 3 3/4.
Yeah.
Back in like the 90s.
My therapist says it started due to childhood trauma that I've never recovered from. But yes, it started mid-90s. I was in high school and bored one afternoon and went to Zellers. If you remember Zellers, I'm dating myself. But yeah, went to Zellers, went to the toy section, was like, oh, is that Darth Vader? Like a Star Wars toy? So that Darth Vader right there was the very first figure I bought.
Okay, now I have that Darth Vader, and I remember going inside. I was Toys R Us at the time. You remember Toys R Us?
Of course, yes.
I think they're still here.
We probably bumped into each other a few times.
So Toys R Us was doing it, and my first was R2-D2. I remember buying R2-D2, and my R2-D2 was my first in the 70s, was also R2-D2. So I started there. And what happened after you bought that one figure, Jeff?
Well, you kept going to Zellers, and they kept coming out with new figures. And basically how it started with me is, okay, I've got the Vader. Now what goes with Vader? Well, I bought Luke. And then, well, Luke needs a land speeder. Well, he needs his Jedi Master, old Ben, and he needs his droids. And so it started with one diorama, one shelf that was sitting on my desk. And, people would come over and be like, oh, that's cool. Like, where'd you get that? And suddenly the one shelf became 2 shelves, became 3 shelves, became 4 shelves. And, well, the rest is history.
Well, it kind of goes to say that when you start off small in collecting, it never stays small. I love the idea of people coming to me and saying they have these collecting problems because it makes me feel better about myself. The biggest thing that you have that I don't have, though, is everything's on display. And that is an amazing feat to have so much stuff on display. When you started putting things on display, did it start small and grow into your basement here, or did you just put them up on the wall?
Essentially, that's it. I was big on the dioramas. If you're going to collect, I thought, well, no, let's think of creative ways to display them. And that's part of the fun of collecting, too. Okay, I got this new figure. How is he going to fit into the story I'm telling, the diorama? So if you go through my collection, you look at each individual shelf, there's a distinct theme, whether it's Tatooine or Empire Strikes Back, or maybe it's just one of my favorite scenes that I've recreated on my shelf. And that just helps me relive it. I come down here, I'm like, I still love that scene. I still love this about that movie. So whenever I buy something, I'm immediately thinking, where is it going to fit in? How am I going to tell the story? How is it going to fit in with everything else that I have?
So I'm a huge collector of things, and I keep most of my stuff in the box, and I have them hidden all over the city like you do probably, but I don't have this display. I always love looking at toys that are actually open. Now, what do you think about things like, points of articulation? Is that a good thing for you, or does that even care about that?
Oh yeah, it has to be. That's predominantly why I don't collect statues, because there's no room for creativity, there's no articulation, it's just you bought the statue, that's it. Even as part of the problem with the 3 3/4, they've improved over the years, where they've added more points of articulation as the line has continued. So that's been more fun. But that's a huge selling factor. For me, somebody who opens their toys and creates dioramas, articulation is number one.
So do you actually care about the packaging? Do you keep all your packages? Because packaging to me is like part of the art of the toy. Do you keep your stuff or you toss it?
That's garbage, Tony.
See, and that is the difference between some collectors, good collectors, who actually look at it as a piece of art, and those who look at it as a toy.
True, true.
So
This is fairly artistic, but yes, I appreciate the amount of creativity and design that goes into some of this packaging, especially when you move up in price to like a Sideshow figure or a Hot Toys figure. But the 3 3/4, it's bubble packaging with some backing. Yeah, I'd toss that.
yeah, I understand. Do you have anything that's from the 70s? Do you keep anything or have anything from when you were young, or is that just not even in your wheelhouse?
When I was younger, I was always fascinated with Star Wars, but I really didn't love it until Timothy Zahn's trilogy came out. And it was the first new Star Wars content that was ever released. So I read those books, and that really fueled the fire. When I was younger, it was all about He-Man, Transformers, G.I. Joe. Those were predominantly the toys that I collected. Star Wars wasn't. So again, back in Zellers there, that was the first time where I had seen a Star Wars toy, and it just snowballed from there.
Now, also, you collect other things too. You were actually saying earlier that you do have a huge He-Man collection and that kind of stuff as well. Is it a possibility that one day you'll pull out of Star Wars and put all your He-Man out?
Truth be told, before I did this, my He-Man was out. Everything you see here, these shelves were actually built for my He-Man collection, which I had out for a number of years, and felt bad because my Star Wars stuff was collecting dust. And people know me more for being really into Star Wars than really into He-Man. And I just thought, I better show my true colors, and that was a mistake.
Punch TV is brought to you in part by Amazing Stories, providing Saskatoon with comics, games, toys, graphic novels, t-shirts, and more for over 22 years. Online at AmazingStoriesComics.com, in person on 8th Street in Saskatoon.
Hey everybody, Craig Silliphant, the Movie Geek here, and my chum from another mum, Hank Cruz, and we want to talk to you about our best and worst movies of 2020. Man, what do you want to start? You want to start with the best ofs?
Oh, I think we should start with the best, because this year hasn't been the greatest year, but there has been numerous awesome films and numerous bad films as well. But you want me to go first?
Sure, it has
go
been a
first.
good year for films, hasn't it?
Like numerous films, but for the first time, I'm selecting a documentary film as my favorite film of the year. So it is called A Secret Love, 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 starring two old ladies, Pat Herschel and Terry Donahue, who's from Saskatchewan, by the way, born here, represent. It is a story where they go and they walk us through their 72-year relationship from the minute they met all the way up to the point where they came out to their family, most of which they didn't really come out to until right before their most recent wedding. Now, this documentary doesn't focus on the hate and the prejudice surrounding same-sex couples and same-sex marriage, but more about how they kept their love alive despite all of those factors trying to tear it apart. It is an inspiring film, a beautiful film acknowledging Pat and Terry's love for each other, their over 7-decade romance. I gave it a 98 out of 100. You need to watch it. You'll shed a tear. It's on Netflix. It's beautiful. You need to watch it. A Secret Love, my favorite film of the year.
Nice. I've heard of that one, but I hadn't seen it yet. And I was actually aware of the Saskatchewan connection. I think that's where I had first actually heard about it on Twitter or something.
Good.
I'm going to go a little less socially responsible here, I think. But I am going to pick as my number one Palm Springs. Now, to be fair, I've only seen it once, and I need to watch it again. So, there is some chance I could shuffle some things around. But I think overall, it's the one that stuck with me over, like I said, what was a great year for movies, even though there was not really any, theatrical situations going on. So Palm Springs, without giving too much away, it stars Andy Samberg, Kristen Milioti, Peter Gallagher, J.K. Simmons, and it follows two strangers who meet at a Palm Springs wedding only to get stuck in a Groundhog's Day style time loop. So, that's a mild spoiler, but I guess that's the synopsis of the movie. So that you figure that stuff out pretty quickly. Now, it's easy to compare this to something like Groundhog's Day and go, it's just Groundhog's Day again, right? And sure, there's a little bit of that, idea to it. But I will say, as a genre, that whole like stuck in a time loop thing has actually been quite successful over the last number of years. I mean, you've got the classic Groundhog's Day, but you've also got like the Happy Death Day movies, which are like way more entertaining than they have any right to be. Palm Springs, though, I think it's a movie that will appeal to a really wide audience because it's kind of a goofy comedy on one hand, like just a straightforward rom-com that most people would be fine with. It's pretty accessible in that way, but it also has these deeper notes that it's plucking, right? Where like it's this existential story, and it's about existence and love and life and exploring things that were maybe hinted at in Groundhog's Day, but this movie takes them, way further in terms of like discussing some of these concepts and, being kind of a science fiction guy and stuff like that. I love that kind of thing. So I think it's smart enough for like art film people that they would like it, but it's also fun enough that just a straightforward mainstream audience would like it. So Palm Springs, what did you think of that one?
I love that movie. It's definitely in my top 10, and it is nice to see Andy in a movie that critics enjoy as well. So it's time that he gets some props out there too. I like that.
Yeah. So on the best of side, let's be quick here, but are there any other, you want to rattle off a few other movies?
Oh, so also I gave a 98 out of 100 to it. It's also a documentary. It's also on Netflix, but Dick Johnson is Dead.
Right.
Have you watched that one?
I haven't, but I heard it's really good.
So his daughter is a filmmaker. She goes and throughout this film stages his death in multiple ways. He's a really good sport about it. But it's a movie that celebrates his life and then paints a picture of mortality that can be seen and appreciated by everyone. It's super unique, very emotional. Also a 98 out of 100. It was a toss-up between that, but I went with The Secret Love for the best. You got to check that one out too.
Nice. If I rattled through my list quickly, I said Palm Springs. These aren't necessarily in order, but The Invisible Man, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, The Hunt. I actually did like Tenet, even though it's quite flawed. Kajillionaire was really fun. On the Rocks, the new Sofia Coppola. Black Bear was a really weird one. I liked Mank. Another Round with Mads Mikkelsen. Les Miserables was a French crime movie. The Assistant, which I think I know you've seen. That one was really good. The Beach Boy Story. Shirley was really good. Soul, the new Pixar movie that just came out at Christmas. Greyhound and Save Yourselves. So now the worst movie of the year. What was the worst? If you want to name a couple, that's fine. But what was the worst movie you saw this year, Hank?
So I saw I don't know, multiple horrific films, but because of the streamers, I think that's what the kids call it now, all the streaming services out there, I just started turning them off. Like, why go through and watch the whole thing when it's just, but I did watch a few horrible films that I did go all the way through. So this one is a movie called You Should Have Left. Now, it would have been way funnier if I actually saw it in the theater and at the end it comes up in the title, You Should Have Left. Because it's so bad. Kevin Bacon, Amanda Seyfried, however you pronounce her name, it's supposed to be like a horror movie. It was horrendous. The title says it all. You should have left. Don't watch it. That was I watched it all the way through. And for disappointing films, I'm sure that you would agree because I read all of your stuff about it. WWWD. What would Wonder Woman do? She would disappoint me. Horrible film. Horrible. Disappointing on all fronts. Wonder Woman. But yeah, you should have left. Like, you should have left.
I would say I have three movies I would mention, and I really would want to put Wonder Woman as the worst because it's like it's not just like what's the worst movie. It's like what had the most buildup that you were excited for, then sucked, and so that feels worse. But I have to say I saw Trolls World Tour with my kids, and that was probably the worst movie I saw this year. Scoob, another movie I watched with my kids. That one was slightly better than Trolls World Tour.
Oh, I wish you wouldn't have brought that up. I tried to forget it. I'm the biggest Scooby-Doo fan, and it really just tore my heart out, that movie. I don't even want to talk about it. It hurt me so much. Like, way to ruin the franchise. Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't even see how that was a Scooby-Doo. Like, it didn't really even feel like a Scooby-Doo movie, even though it had all the like regular principal Scooby-Doo characters in it. I was like, what is this? But then, yeah, as you said, Wonder Woman 1984, which I wasn't like necessarily thinking was going to be the greatest movie of all time or anything, But like I went in with fairly low expectations because I didn't mind the first one. I liked the first one the first time I saw it, but when I tried to rewatch it, I couldn't get through it. Like it was that bloated. It's like 2.5 hours long. The second one doesn't improve on any of that stuff, and in fact is less entertaining than the first one. There's a lot of it that doesn't make sense. There was really funny stuff that like, for example, it thinks the audiences are idiots too. It's like the Chris Pine is sort of revived after his like death in the first movie. And he's like experiencing 1984 and he sees an escalator and fireworks and he's all like, whoa, like, what is that? And I was like, they had those things in the 1800s, like well before he was born. So it was just a stupid movie. And
that time that the Mandalorian went to broadcast over the entire world speaking in English and everybody knew what he was saying. Like that was a good one too. I like that.
Yeah, he actually carried that movie, Pedro Pascal.
Tried.
So,
but without the facial hair, I can't handle it. I'm like, dude, get your mustache back.
Yeah, so that's our best and worst movies of the year. Anything you want to add, Hank?
I think that this year will be very promising for films, and there has been several that are being released right now, or even that new Tom Hanks movie. We aren't going to be able to see it on demand until January, so there's going to be a bunch more coming out in the next month or two that I'm sure we're both going to love. But for what we have seen this year, yes, those are our favorites and the worst. So I wish you wouldn't have talked about Scoob though. Oh man.
Great. In 2 seconds, what's the movie you're most looking forward to 2021?
The most that I'm looking forward to is actually, and I feel really bad that I can't remember the title, but Carey Mulligan, she's starring in it, going around murdering a bunch of people.
Promising Women or something.
Yeah, it's Promising Young Woman, I think is what it is. Yeah,
that one. Dune, being a huge Dune fan, that's the one I'm looking forward to. So.
Punch TV is brought to you in part by Amazing Stories, providing Saskatoon with comics, games, toys, graphic novels, t-shirts, and more for over 22 years. Online at AmazingStoriesComics.com, in person on 8th Street in Saskatoon.
Well, 2020 was an interesting year, and a lot of really cool books came out. Bit of a different tone, I would have to say. Some things got delayed, of course, because of COVID, but what we did get was pretty great. So I'm going to share with you some of my favorite things that came out this year. My most favorite and the biggest book here on the table is this one right here. It's the Fantagraphics Studio Edition of Dan Klaus's work. It's amazing. It's full of giant panels and things that maybe didn't quite appear the way that they did in their final format. So for a fan, it is a real gift and one that I looked forward to for a really, really long time. And it finally came out early last year. It is beautiful, but it's not really a story. It's really more of a collectible. So even though that's my number one pick, it's probably a little obscure for most folks. Lot of great books on the table here that I just want to mention a few things. The newest edition from Simon Hanselman, Seeds and Stems. This is Megan Moog and the whole crew, but it's really a downer. It reflects what 2020 was like. It's a little depressing. It's not as light and happy with their crazy hijinks, literally hijinks. But I love the packaging because it looks like it's a prescription, which is very fitting. Very, very cool book. Adrian Tomina came out with this one here, The Loneliness of the Long Distance Cartoonist. Very autobiographical, very much in his style. And it has lots of inside jokes, especially if you're a Fantagraphics or a Drawn and Quarterly fan, because it has little cameos from different writers and authors and artists, and it's a good read. But again, a little more obscure. If you're looking for just good storytelling, this was really fun. Robert Kirkman, you may know him from Walking Dead. This is Firepower. This is his new book. And this is another book where, because of COVID, the timeline got all messed up. The launch of it was supposed to be in May for Free Comic Book Day, and the first issue was going to be given out free. And then after that, you would get the prequel. But because Free Comic Book Day didn't happen, we ended up getting the prequel first, and then all the other issues followed later. But it's really cool if you like Kung Fu, if you like kind of that Shaolin style. It's about a guy who's now a suburban dad, And this flashes back to 15 years prior when he's trying to track down his original family and gets trained at the temple and then finds out he has some powers. And then the ongoing comic book, which is still ongoing and is great, kind of carries forward the story from present day. So this is a great one to look into if you want an adventure-y kind of story. Very, very fun. Very good. This one here, I Want You by Lisa Hanawalt. Lisa Hanawalt is a little bit wacky. This one is like way more sexual than some of her other stuff. It's mostly crazy drawings and stuff, but it's really fun. It's a good laugh. And there were a couple of days in 2020 where I just needed a little pick-me-up, and I Want You by Lisa Hanawalt definitely fit the bill there. Probably my top 3 is Last of the Independents by Matt Fraction. This one is loosely based on the movie with Walter Matthau, and I didn't know about the movie with Walter Matthau. It was originally supposed to be called Last of the Independents, but at the last minute they renamed it Charlie Vinnick, and it's, you know, sort of heisty con man, really lots of twists and turns in it. If you like crime dramas, this is definitely one to put on your radar, and it's a crime thriller. It's just fun and great, and I hope that Matt does more of this in the new year because I really, really enjoyed it. But the 2 top books, one I don't have with me today because I've already loaned it to somebody else, is Pulp and Reckless. Both came out by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips this year. Reckless just came in under the wire in December, and it's fantastic. Basically, the story is about this guy who has this background of FBI espionage kind of stuff. He was in with riots and rebelliousness in the 70s and involved with all these like underground groups. And now flash forward, he's, you know, making do. He's not really a happy man. He gets by. He lives in a movie theater, which he owns, which he sort of earned by doing something shady for a client. And now someone from his past has come forward and he wants to try to set the record right if he can. It's exciting. It reads like a movie. It feels like a movie. When you're reading this, you honestly have a cinematic experience. And since a lot of us can't or won't go to the movie theater till the vaccine is fully spread around, this is the next closest thing. So highly, highly recommend Reckless. And the other book that came out from these 2 was Pulp. Oh my God, it's so good. Pulp is the story of an older guy. He used to be a cartoonist, kind of got screwed over by the industry, and now he's down and out and he needs some dough, and he gets offered a part in a little heist. Now, the good thing about the heist is that it's going to screw over some like Nazi propagandists. So like, what's to lose? Only things don't quite go the way that he expects. So it's got comics, it's got westerns, it's got Nazis, it's got everything. It's a fantastic crime drama, and again, the artwork by Sean Phillips is stunning. If you like the noir genre at all, then you should pick up every single thing that these 2 have ever done together because they're just so good. Those are a few picks. So hopefully you will want to read something from these lists, and we'll have more picks for you this year in 2021.
Now, all of a sudden, you're collecting 3 3/4, and your life changes. You win the lottery, or you like somehow decided you weren't satisfied with the small figures, and you went big, and you went big in a huge way. Like this is the sideshow stuff that is an amazing likeness of figures of the characters, and it's looking at your collection here being on display. There's nothing I've ever seen before.
Well, that was a late night conversation I had with my wife. She was laying in bed and she's like, Jeff, I think it's time you grow up. And I said, you're right. It's time to grow up. So I started collecting dolls instead of toys.
Now, the dolls are amazing. I dabble in a bit of the Hot Toys stuff, and you can see by just the likenesses and the amount of detail they put into these things is amazing. When did you start buying all the Hot Toys stuff?
Well, I was always following Sideshow, but obviously Sideshow's a distributor. They produce their own Star Wars stuff, but then Hot Toys got the license. Now, Hot Toys is very similar to Sideshow. They just go that extra little bit. The details a little bit better, maybe a little more screen accurate, more articulation, and I thought, well, if Hot Toys is doing these now, it's time to get into it. So I started almost immediately as soon as they released their first figure. That was the first Hot Toys I bought.
What's the first one you bought?
Darth Vader, all the way.
Darth Vader, is he here right now? Is that him right now?
That's him right there,
That's your first one. Okay, so when you bought Darth Vader, he obviously, do you think they've evolved in the way that they've been making toys since then? Because that's probably like 10 years ago at least.
Oh, absolutely. Every time they produce a figure, they change it, they tweak it a little way. They're, oh, we can do this better, we can add some more detail here, asymmetry, all that stuff they take into consideration. So with every phase, more and more new detail. It's phenomenal.
Okay, so here's the thing I have. When you see a Boba Fett like this and you move over to the Han Solos, do they produce these and then that's it? You only get like one chance to get them and that's it unless you want to buy them on the secondary market?
There is a limited window. Basically, a figure will go up for pre-order for about 1.5 years. You'll have to pre-order the figure. But after that, once it's gone to pre-order, if that inventory sells out, that is it. End of line. You are out of luck.
And that is why you have to be on top of things like right away. Okay, so they've moved over and they've done, or not moved over, but they've looked at and they've done a lot of different Star Wars, from the prequels to the newer movies. I see some of the ones that come in have little dioramas already attached. And you get stuff that I've never seen before. They obviously have exclusives.
Yes, any video game, any comic book, you never really know what's in the mind of the Hot Toys developers, whether they're going to focus on a video game. Right now, obviously, a heavy focus is on The Mandalorian, so we're seeing a lot of figures from there. Clone Wars is big right now. They're going back and producing a lot of the Clone Wars cartoon figures.
And this is what I wanted to show. So this is pretty impressive. This is brand new. There's your brand new Mandalorian with their remnant stormtroopers. Those are amazing figures, and they're really on top of things. But at the same time, they go back and redo some of the older stuff, and it's amazing. What you have here is one of the most amazing collections of dolls I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of dolls, but these are the most amazing Star Wars figures I've ever seen. So you got things coming in all the time. Are you always buying?
Almost always buying.
Yeah, so you're buying everything that comes out then. My favorite you have over there, of all the ones you have a porcelain looking, it's white with blue, porcelain Stormtrooper, which to me is my favorite one you have. It's different. I love different things. I like oddities, and it's definitely my favorite one. Okay, wow, I don't even know what to say. I'm actually out of breath, amazed at all the stuff that you have here. Thank you for letting us look at your Star Wars collection. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Well, that wraps up our first episode of Punch TV for the new year. We hope you enjoyed our visit to Jeff's collection, and hopefully you're inspired by Hank and Craig to have some cool new picks for pop culture for this year, and maybe one of the books that I suggested will be on your reading list this year. Until next time, keep your dukes up.